Well, all the rust on the bonnet has been repaired. Now it's time to put it all back together to see how everything fits, and in that process I'll make adjustments to make sure things do fit properly. There were a few brackets that I hadn't welded onto the wing down in here somewhere. They've got to be put on, but I was waiting until I started the assembly process just to make sure I can get those particular pieces in the right position. So anyway, slow process. I'll start assembling. It will include all of the pieces. I've got the remains of the hardware here. Some of it was beyond repair, but I've actually purchased a complete new set, so I'll start putting on the old pieces, and then when I run out I'll switch over to new bolts. So anyway, I'll start and see how I go. Now I've just been around the air ducts and put all the flanges on. Also put the flanges on the headlight diaphragms. The air ducts themselves are now pretty much in the final position, with the exception of no gap under the flange. I'll rectify that before I go too much further. I'll pack that up a bit just to get the size of the gap I want for the adhesive. But at this stage they're all connected, even onto the mud shields, and what I need to do in some places is to make some slight alterations to the flanges, and they're the ones that I've repaired. So some of my repair additions have been slightly oversized, so I just need to slightly trim those so they fit a little bit better, and it's the fit against other panels that I'm looking at there, particularly on the headlight diaphragms. Some of the edges might need to be trimmed a fraction so I can fit them in, but at this stage everything's ready now to, say, apart from packing those flanges up a little bit, to dropping on the bottom pan and see how things start to align. That's when the interesting parts will happen, because the pan has to align with the actual inner valances, these here. They've got to align with those, and then it's got to align with the headlight diaphragms. So there's scope for the need for adjustment, particularly the amount of repair I've done to the air ducts. So there could be things that are slightly out of alignment, but with careful fitting I just will start to address those one by one. Now all the panels are basically in position, not a final position, but everything seems to fit together, at least without the bottom pan. It's the bottom pan that I've now got to be able to line up with everything. Now the pan does line up with the wings, the centre section, that's not a problem, but getting it to do that in addition to lining up with the air scoops, that is the area that I'm working on now. Now when this bonnet was pulled apart, one thing that didn't line up at all were the air intakes there. They didn't fit well around the actual bottom pan itself. They were hanging down, or in which case with the bonnet turned up the other way, they're actually sitting up. I can't imagine that was the way they should have been. I would expect, and what I'm certainly aiming for, is for these scoops here to fit around the panels or fit under the panels, so you can't actually see it, just a seamless opening going straight into the air scoop itself. So what I'm now doing is putting this bottom scoop on. It goes onto these inner valances there. I haven't drilled the holes for that on this side. This is one of the major repairs that I had to do on those flanges there. So I'm about to drill those, fit this, so I know that the distance between the valances is correct, and then start to work on the fit. As I say, it's the fit around here that I'm basically working on, and I think the only way to do that is to get everything together the way it should be, so I've got the distances correct, and then start to work. Now these scoops here were also misshapen. I've tried to get them to what I think the correct shape is, but the correct shape will be how they fit into the bottom panel. At the moment they're sitting well under the centre section, but as I say, I'm not too sure whether I've got them too far apart or what, but as I say, I'll get this on to get the distance between them correct, and then work from there. I've been gradually putting pieces together to see if they all align. I've had a few problems. To start with, my flange on the top here was too high at the rear end there, which meant that the bottom pan didn't sit down and line up with the holes in the valance, so I had to reset that. So that was my doing. So that's the first one. So I've basically rectified that. Still a bit to clean up, but it's now in the right position. The other couple of things I've found is that when I've been putting on the headlight diaphragms, some of the holes don't quite line up. There's one on the bottom there which is slightly out, so I'll just elongate the hole in the panel, and so it's not much at all. Same problem was on the other side. Very, very minor adjustment, so that was an adjustment to these panels. The other one, I've been trying to put the headlight diaphragm on the other side, and I've encountered a slightly different problem. Now, you mightn't be able to see this, it's very hard to see, but this plate behind doesn't line up with the hole. It's basically been welded too far this way, so because of that it doesn't line up with the holes in the valance. So what I'm going to do is to remove that and drop it down to line up with the hole. I mean, you can't even get a self-tapper in there without the other panel at the moment, so once I drop that, it will line up with the hole. So that's another thing I've got to fix, only minor, but doesn't take much when you're trying to line up quite a few holes to get them all to fit. Now the bottom pan basically fits well around the front, lines up at the front of the mouth with the centre panel, but there is a problem. I have found that I can't get the air ducts on the inner valances to slide in neatly around the mouth, and there's a reason for that I've basically been able to find. Now I've just got a flat ruler, steel rule, just sitting on the flange there. You may be able to see that there's a gap between basically the straight edge and the panel. Now, as an exaggeration, the panel dips on this end. It's all right this side, but this side it's actually turned down. Now, because of that, it's very hard to slide the I'll get over. I'll just come back this way. When you try and slide the air tube in over the flange, because the lower panel, the way it is, it actually sits up high, and it's very hard to slide that over. In other words, both flanges are not together at the very rear. They're spread apart. So just coming back to this panel over here, what I have to do is to raise the flange at the rear end. So what I'm going to do is to cut through the join there, lift that up and get it so it's straight. The other thing is that once I've straightened that, I'll see how it fits, but it also looks as though that this piece here also, now it's dipping down, so when that tries to join the centre panel, it may not fit precisely to make it a neat join. It's the same problem on the other side. So what I've got to do is to make a modification to this. And it's not a major modification, but it's one that is stopping me from actually sitting the lower panel on the bonnet and being able to attach everything else to it. So a little bit of surgery, and I'll see where I go from there. But the first thing will be to cut that join, lift the flange on the inner edge, and then see if the air tube slides over the join a lot easier than it is at the moment. Now, I've already mentioned there was a need to modify the lower panel around this area on both sides. Now I've just cut the weld on the replacement panel and pulled it out further, so that's got a little bit more shaping to do, and I'll have to actually add metal to this panel and close up the area that I've cut out. So that's one modification has to be made on both sides. But the other issue I've found is when I've tried to fit the the air tube in around the replacement panel, it actually has a gap. I'll just stand up so if I can show that. Actually has a gap between the panel and the trumpet there. Now I've tried fitting it, refitting it, and it doesn't fit. This is the worst side. The other side is not so bad, but it still doesn't come under the front lip of this part of the mouth. So it leaves a gap. Now what I've found, I still have the original, or what's left of the original lower panel outside the garage, and I've done some measurements, and it just so happens that the replacement panel is such that the distance to the front of the mouth from the rear of the panel, so this cross member here, which actually holds the mountings for the whole bonnet, it is a different distance. In fact, it on this side, on the, what's this side? This is the right hand side of the bonnet. It's actually 19 millimeters further out than the original panel, and on the other side it's 11 millimeters further out than the original panel. Now, one saving grace is that the distance between the cross member and the front is at least the same left and right. On the original panel it wasn't, so the right hand side was actually a shorter gap than the left hand side. Now whether that's as a result of accident damage, I have no idea, but certainly it was different. So what I've now got to do is to be able to fit the trumpet to the new dimensions. Now that's not that difficult. It means adding metal to the bottom of the trumpet here and getting it to come under the panel. Once I've got it long enough, then I can set about trying to shape anything that needs to be shaped here so the two panels are aligned. So a little bit of work to do both on the replacement panel, and so I need to just finish this area off, and then I also need to add metal to the trumpets on both sides. What I'm about to do is to actually straighten up the metal in the opening here. Now originally this was actually sloping down, which meant the flanges for the centre section and the pan here weren't lining up properly, so I've raised the flange and cut the join. Now I've got to fill that with metal, so I'm just going to weld a piece of metal in, trim that back, and then re-weld it. So basically this opening section here will come up to the level of the flange. It shouldn't take too long, and I've got to do the same on the other side. I've finished adding metal into the mouth here, so that's now nice and level with the flange. I've also finished adding metal to the trumpet. Just stand up a bit. So I've added metal on this side of the trumpet, so now it sits under. So that takes into account the distance that this is further forward than the original. So that's now quite even. I can probably fit that a little bit better, but I'm waiting till I've done the other side and then putting the centre section of the bonnet on, just to make sure of the fit around the entire trumpet. So now it's just a case of replicating that on the other side. The only problem with that at the moment is it's now approaching 39 degrees, expected to get to 42, so I won't stay out here much longer. I've got fans running, but it's still not enough. Anyway, I'll now start on this side. I've already added metal in here, not as much on this side, and I've now got to straighten that section out. So I'll do that, and then I'll start fitting it all together again. I've reshaped the mouth of the centre section here. It now fits in line with the bottom pan. The trumpet fits around a lot better. I've still got a little bit of shaping to do there to get it fit and even spacing around the trumpet. But what I've also found is that the width of the bottom pan here is more on this side than it is on the other side. There's about a 7 or 8 mil difference. This is much longer or wider than the other side. So what I'm going to do is to trim this side to get it down to the same as the other side, so it just doesn't look out of place. You know, one side wider than the other. I'll at least have them the same width. And seeing I'm doing this area on the other side for the centre section, I'll do the same thing. I'll make the width the same so it's equal on either side. So this has been a very slow process. I think I've now got at least this side the correct shape, or correct shape bearing in mind I've got a reproduction bottom panel and an original top panel, but a consistent shape, one to the other. So that's taken quite some time. So it's still a little bit more to trim that back, and then I'll start working on the trumpet fit. But anyway, I'll just trim that, and then I've got to start on the other side and do exactly the same.